My name is Logan Pierce, and for a long time, I thought loyalty was something you prove by enduring discomfort. I was wrong. Back then, my days followed a strict rhythm. Up at 5, gym, work, home by evening, dinner on the table before 7. I believed consistency was love. I believed showing up mattered more than showing off. Marlo Jensen didn't always agree. When we first met, she admired my steadiness. She said I made her feel safe. She said she liked that I didn't chase attention, didn't need validation from strangers. For years, that was enough. Until it wasn't. The shift didn't come with shouting or slammed doors. It crept in quietly. Subtle changes. Longer pauses before she answered questions. A phone that never left her hand. A smile that arrived late. Or not at all. When I walked into the room, she started talking about potential, about ambition, about people who wanted more out of life. I worked longer hours, took on extra projects, told myself she'd notice. She didn't. Instead, she began spending more time with friends. Her wardrobe changed. Her patience thinned. Our conversations shrank to logistics, bills, errands, obligations. Intimacy turned mechanical, then distant, then rare. One evening, I came home early without warning. The house felt occupied, but not by me. I heard her voice from down the hall, lower than usual, softer, edged with excitement I hadn't heard in months. Then another voice answered, confident, relaxed, like he belonged there. I didn't walk in. That decision saved me. I sat in my truck, hands on the steering wheel, staring at the front door of my own house while something inside me hardened into clarity. Not rage, not panic, resolve. From that moment on, I stopped confronting and started observing. I watched patterns form, late nights, inconsistent stories, trips that didn't add up. I saved messages she forgot to delete. I took screenshots she never knew existed. I tracked dates, times, words. The man's name was Dylan Rourke. She spoke about him once without realizing it, complaining about a co-worker who challenged her thinking. The admiration in her voice gave her away. That's when I knew this wasn't an accident or a phase. It was a replacement. When I finally asked her directly, she didn't cry. She didn't apologize. She sighed, like someone tired of pretending. She told me I'd grown predictable. She said Dylan understood her drive. She claimed I'd stopped exciting her. What she didn't realize was that while she'd been building a fantasy, I'd been preparing for reality. The divorce happened quickly, too smoothly, almost rehearsed. She was eager to move on, eager to shed the past, including me. I let her. I moved out quietly, changed my routine, reduced my footprint. People assumed I'd been broken by it. They were wrong. I was rebuilding. Months passed, then a year. I hadn't heard from Marlo at all when the first unexpected message arrived. Not from her, but from someone in her circle. That's when I knew something was coming. And whatever it was, they didn't want me silent anymore. The first message came from a number I didn't recognize. Hey Logan, it's Serena, Marlo's friend. She mentioned sending you something. Just wanted to make sure you saw it. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering, then locked the phone and slid it back onto the table. 10 minutes later, another notification lit up. This is awkward, but could you please reply? It's important. Important. That word again. I didn't answer either. The truth was, I already knew what was happening on their end. I'd seen it before. When control starts slipping and people panic because silence leaves too much room for truth. At work, I moved through my day like normal. Meetings, emails, small talk by the coffee machine. No one there knew the version of my life that had burned down. That was intentional. I'd learned the value of privacy the hard way. By mid-afternoon, my phone was vibrating every few minutes. Different names. Same urgency. One message stood out. Logan, please don't do anything impulsive. Dylan doesn't know everything. We can talk. I smiled for the first time that day. So that was it. They weren't worried about closure. They weren't worried about peace. They were worried about exposure. I leaned back in my chair and let the memories surface. The ones I'd boxed away so carefully. After the divorce, people assumed I'd walked away empty-handed. They didn't see the quiet nights I spent organizing files, the hours verifying timelines, the careful way I stored evidence, not out of revenge, but self-preservation. When Marlo had asked for a clean break, she never asked what that meant to me. I still had the ring she'd tossed onto the counter during our last argument, claiming it didn't mean anything anymore. I'd picked it up later, not out of sentiment, but instinct. I still had shared documents she forgot existed. Contracts, messages, transfers that didn't match her story. And I still had screenshots, dozens of them, conversations she never imagined I'd see, words she'd written while sitting across from me on the couch, pretending to listen. The story she'd sold to Dylan was simple. She'd said I was distant, emotionally unavailable, that the marriage had ended quietly and mutually, that there were no loose ends. The lies aged poorly. That evening, my phone rang. This time it was Marlo. I watched it ring until it stopped. Then she texted, "Please, we need to talk. Just answer." I waited. 5 minutes later, another message came through, shorter, sharper. "Why are you doing this?" I exhaled slowly. I wasn't doing anything. I was letting gravity work. The next morning, I woke up to voicemail notifications stacked like dominoes. Marlo's voice cracked in the first one. She tried sounding calm in the second. By the third, her frustration slipped. "Dylan found something," she said. "Not from you, just something. And he's asking questions." Good. I drove to work, hand steady on the wheel, heart surprisingly calm. Revenge, I'd learned, wasn't loud. It didn't require confrontation or threats. It required timing. At lunch, I finally replied to one message, not hers. "We should talk." I texted Serena. Her response came instantly. "Thank you. Thank you. Can we meet?" "Tonight," I replied. "Public place." When we met, Serena looked exhausted. Her eyes darted around the cafe like she expected someone to overhear. She didn't waste time. "Dylan thinks the divorce wasn't as clean as Marlo said," she whispered. "He found an email thread. Partial. Enough to worry him." I nodded, stirring my drink slowly. "And?" I asked. "And she's scared," Serena admitted. "She says you're trying to ruin her." I met her gaze. "No," I said calmly. "I'm letting the truth breathe." Serena swallowed. "He doesn't know about the overlap," she said, "about how long it was going on." Of course he didn't. Marlo had always curated her image carefully. Victim when convenient. Visionary when admired. Honest only when cornered. Serena leaned in. "Logan, what do you want?" I thought about that. For a long time, I believed I wanted vindication. Maybe even an apology. But sitting there, watching the panic ripple outward from a lie that had gone unchecked for too long, I realized something else. I wanted peace. And peace didn't come from silence. "I want honesty," I said. "Not theatrics. Not damage. Just facts." Serena nodded slowly, as if relieved. That night, Marlo called again. I answered. Her voice shook. "What do you want from me?" I kept my tone even. "Nothing." "That's not true," she snapped. "You're doing this on purpose." I paused. I didn't reach out. I didn't threaten anyone. I didn't lie. Silence stretched between us. "You're getting married," I added quietly. "You should start that life with the truth." Her breath hitched. "You don't understand," she said. "If he knows everything, then he deserves to decide." I replied, just like I did. She hung up. I knew then that the next move wouldn't be mine. It would be hers. And whatever choice she made would decide how this ended for all of us. The morning after that call, the city felt different, like something invisible had shifted overnight. I woke before my alarm, the weight in my chest familiar but steadier now. This wasn't anxiety. It was anticipation. When lies start collapsing, they don't fall quietly. They scrape and crack on the way down, and everyone nearby feels it. My phone was silent. That alone told me a lot. Marlo had always been reactive, emotional. If she wasn't calling, texting, or sending someone else to speak for her, it meant she was scrambling, trying to patch cracks faster than they were spreading. I went about my morning routine like nothing was wrong. Shower, coffee, news playing softly in the background. I dressed carefully, deliberately. There was power in being composed when others were unraveling. By mid-morning, the silence broke. It wasn't Marlo. It was Dylan Rourke. I stared at his name on the screen for a long moment before answering. I didn't rush. I didn't hesitate. I simply picked up. "Logan," he said. His voice was steady, but there was strain underneath it. "Thanks for taking my call. I didn't realize I'd missed one." I replied evenly. A pause. "I asked Marlo for your number," he said. "She didn't want to give it to me." That tracked. "What can I do for you?" I asked. Another pause, longer this time. "I think there are things about your marriage I don't know." he said carefully, and I'd rather hear them from you than guess. I leaned back in my chair, eyes on the ceiling. You sure about that? I asked. Some truths don't fit neatly into wedding plans. He exhaled. That's what I'm afraid of. We agreed to meet later that day. Neutral place, no audience, no drama. Just two men sitting across from each other, connected by a woman who'd rewritten the same story twice. When I arrived, Dylan was already there. He stood when he saw me, offering a handshake that felt more respectful than confident. I appreciate you coming, he said. I didn't come to interfere, I replied. Just to clarify. We sat. He didn't accuse, didn't posture. That alone earned him more honesty than Marlo ever had. She told me your marriage ended because you grew apart, he said, that there was no overlap, no betrayal. I nodded slowly. That's what she told everyone. His jaw tightened. Was there? I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I placed my phone on the table, screen down. I didn't come to destroy anything, I said, but I won't protect a lie that cost me years of my life. I turned the screen toward him. One screenshot, then another. Dates aligned. Messages overlapped. Words that contradicted everything she'd promised him. Dylan's face changed. Not dramatically, not explosively, but subtly. Like someone realizing the ground beneath them wasn't solid after all. She said you were emotionally distant, he muttered. That you stopped caring. I smiled faintly. That's a convenient explanation. He ran a hand through his hair. She said you didn't want kids. That you didn't support her goals. I leaned forward. I supported her until she stopped respecting me. The silence that followed was heavy. Real. Earned. I didn't know, he said quietly. I believe that, I replied. He looked up. Why keep the ring? The question surprised me. I didn't keep it for hope, I said after a moment. I kept it because it represented a promise that was broken, not by neglect, but by choice. He nodded, absorbing that. When we stood to leave, he looked smaller somehow. Not weaker, just stripped of certainty. I need time, he said. You should take it, I replied. That evening, Marlo finally called. I didn't let it ring. What did you say to him? She demanded the moment I answered. I showed him the truth, I said calmly. You had no right. I had every right. I interrupted. You just didn't expect me to use it. Her voice cracked. You're ruining everything. No, I said quietly. I'm stopping the damage from spreading. She went silent. I didn't plan for it to happen like this, she whispered. Most people don't, I replied. That doesn't change what they chose. She hung up again. The next day, messages flooded in. Not panic this time, but fractured. Friends asking questions. Some apologizing. Others defending her. I didn't engage. I had already done what needed to be done. 2 days later, Dylan sent one final message. The wedding is postponed. I needed to know who I was standing beside. I stared at the words for a long time. There was no triumph in it. No celebration. Just closure. Real closure. Not the sanitized version Marlo had tried to sell me. That night, I took the ring from the drawer where it had sat untouched for years. I turned it in my fingers once, then placed it back, not as a symbol of loss, but as proof that I'd survived something that once nearly broke me. Revenge hadn't come from humiliation or spectacle. It came from truth, and the truth had finally spoken for itself. The world doesn't end when the truth comes out. It just gets quieter. The days after the postponed wedding moved slowly, like the aftermath of a storm that no one wanted to acknowledge had passed through. There were no dramatic confrontations, no public scenes, no apologies shouted across rooms, just consequences. I returned to my routine, but something had shifted inside me. I slept better. My chest didn't feel tight when I woke up anymore. The silence that once felt heavy now felt earned, like a calm that comes only after you stop carrying someone else's lies. A week later, I ran into Marlo by accident. It was at a grocery store near my office. I was reaching for a carton of milk when I heard my name spoken softly, almost cautiously. I turned. She looked different, not in appearance, but in presence. The confidence she once carried like armor was gone. In its place was uncertainty, an expression I'd never seen on her before. Logan, she said, I didn't think I'd see you. Neither did I replied honestly. We stood there awkwardly, surrounded by normal life. Shopping carts, children asking for snacks, couples debating dinner plans. The ordinary setting made everything feel more real than any dramatic showdown ever could. I didn't think things would spiral like this, she said quietly. I studied her face, searching for something, remorse, maybe, or clarity. What I found instead was regret mixed with disbelief. They always do, I said, just not all at once. She swallowed. Dylan moved out. I nodded, not surprised. He said he needed space, she added quickly. Time to think. That's fair, I replied. She hesitated, then asked the question she'd been circling since the divorce. Do you hate me? I considered it. Hate would have been easier, simpler. But hate requires energy, and I'd spent too much of my life already giving her more than she deserved. No, I said finally. I don't trust you, and I don't owe you anything. But I don't hate you. Her eyes filled, though no tears fell. I didn't think you'd stay quiet forever, she admitted. I just hoped you would. I offered a small, sad smile. Silence isn't weakness. Sometimes it's preparation. She nodded slowly, understanding dawning too late. We parted without another word. That night, I sat on my balcony, watching the city lights blink on one by one. For the first time since the divorce, I didn't feel like I was waiting for something. An apology, a moment, a chance to speak. I'd already spoken, not with shouting, not with revenge fantasies, but with truth, placed carefully into the hands of someone who deserved to see it. The aftermath rippled quietly. Mutual friends stopped calling. Some drifted away. Others reached out, awkwardly, unsure which version of the story they were allowed to believe. I didn't correct them. I didn't need to. Weeks passed, then months. I sold the townhouse and moved closer to the city. Took on a leadership role at work I'd once turned down because I was afraid of being too busy for a marriage that was already gone. I started saying yes to things, projects, invitations, weekends away. Not because I needed distraction, because I wanted growth. One evening, while clearing out old boxes, I found the folder again. The documents, the screenshots, the reminders of a life that had nearly convinced me I wasn't enough. I didn't destroy them. I archived them. There's a difference. They were proof, not of betrayal, but of resilience. Evidence that I'd survived something that once consumed my thoughts and still managed to walk away intact. A few weeks later, Dylan reached out one last time. I wanted to thank you, his message read, not for what happened, but for not lying when it mattered. I stared at the screen, then typed back a single sentence. Truth doesn't pick sides. It just shows up. I never heard from Marlo again, and I was okay with that. The revenge she feared, the dramatic unraveling, the public humiliation, never came. Instead, she lost something far more destabilizing, control over the narrative. As for me, I gained something quieter, confidence, not the kind that demands attention or validation, but the kind that lets you walk away without looking back, the kind that knows you didn't win because someone else lost, but because you finally chose yourself.